Welcome to an episode of Rediscovered Movies. I'm your host, Nomfanelo. So, the film that I'll be discussing is The Intern. The Intern is a 2015 comedy drama film. It is written and directed by Nancy Meyers, who's known for films such as The Parent Trap and The Holiday. The film stars Robert De Niro, Anne Hathaway, and Rene Russo. Here is the synopsis. Starting a new job can be a difficult challenge, especially if you're already retired. Looking to get back into the game, 70-year-old widower Ben Whitaker, played by Robert De Niro, seizes the opportunity to become a senior intern at an online fashion site. Ben soon becomes popular with his younger co-workers, including Jules Austin, played by Anne Hathaway, the boss and founder of the company. Whitaker's charm, wisdom, and sense of humor help him develop a special bond and growing friendship with Jules. So the film was released in theaters on September 24th, 2015. It had a production budget of $40 million. In terms of box office, it made over $197.1 million worldwide. It opened at number two domestically with over $17.7 million. It was beaten by the film Hotel Transylvania 2. In terms of critical reception, it has a 3.3 rating on Letterboxd. It was nominated for two Teen Choice Awards, which were Choice Movie Actress Comedy for Anne Hathaway and Choice Movie Comedy. So at the time of this recording, it is available to stream on Stars and is available on demand, so check your local provider. All right, let's get into First Discovery. So I think I recall seeing trailers of this movie at the time it came out. It wasn't something that I immediately wanted to see in theaters, but I figured, I would check it out at some point. And I never really got around to it until when I was looking for movies related to fashion to cover for this podcast. And this movie came up as one of the search results. So I figured, why not? Let's check it out for the podcast. And watching it for the first time, I thought it was okay. I thought the performances were solid, particularly with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro. But as a movie itself, it was fine. I just wish that there was more fashion, so to speak, in this movie. But overall, I would say it's quite decent as a comedy and also too as a drama. All right, let's get into the highlights. So I enjoyed the concept. So essentially, with Ben, he's a retired senior. He becomes an intern after he lost his wife. That's quite interesting. At the beginning, his character is quite lonely after losing his wife. He was bored quite often, and his neighbor Patty kept nosing around at times too much. And it wasn't until he saw the flyer, where I believe with Jules's company, they were looking for seniors as interns. First off, the fact that they're looking for seniors as interns is quite interesting. Because you figure maybe it's part of a outreach program, or they want to be charitable, something along those lines. But either way, it is quite fascinating. And essentially, Ben decides, you know what, he'll decide to do that because at least it gets him out of the house. And I'm sure he'll be glad to avoid Patty for obvious reasons. And as an intern, Ben is he's great. He's not bad. He is quite the lifesaver, I would say, at work. He at one point organized the messy desk that drove Jules insane, and he drives Jules home after her driver showed up to work drunk, and then drove her home throughout the movie. And he often he gave advice to Jason in terms of him pursuing Becky, and he allowed one of the other interns, Davis, to stay at his place. So, yeah, Ben is quite the charitable person, and he's a lifesaver. So, yeah, good on Ben for doing all that stuff. And I want to bring up one point that it's funny that he and the other coworkers, Jason, Davis, and Lewis, They broke into Jules's mom's house because Jules accidentally sent her an email that's quite threatening. Wanted them to delete it. So that whole sequence where they go like ocean style, that is quite hilarious there. Ben, not just a good co-worker, but in a way is a good friend, because of him and Jules is interesting that at first they were kind of at odds. Like sure they got along at first, but then as the film progresses, as he became more involved like with her life, they became close friends. So that was cool because at one point he took Jules's daughter Paige to a birthday party, and he helped Jules to reconsider her decision to hire a new CEO because she is often like stressed out with the job. So yeah, good on Ben. And yeah, with this job, Ben, he becomes more fulfilled, I would say. Um, he not just gets along with people at work, but he started a relationship with Fiona, who's the masseuse at the company. It's funny with their first interaction how he was kind of surprised, but also to arouse at the same time. That whole bit was hilarious. And when he and Fiona showed up at a funeral, Patty was jealous of them together. So I found, yeah, that was quite hilarious. But good on Ben, trying to turn things around in his life. So also too, I would say this movie is quite different for a typical Nancy Meyers movie, because of most of the movies that I've seen of hers, they typically involve romance as like the main plot point. But here, like it's more about the friendship between the two leads. In this case, it's Ben and Jules. And yes, and here like we have like the male protagonist. You could argue it's like co-lead between Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, but we really follow the story more through Robert De Niro as his character gets involved in Jules's company. So yeah, that's quite interesting. And it shows with this movie that it's tough to be a CEO, because clearly Jules loves her company about the fit, but is often quite stressed out by it, so much that it kind of affected her marriage to her husband, Matt, who left his career to become a stay at home dad. And but at least like even though when it's stressful for her at times, she's there for her coworkers and for the customers, because we saw at one point she decided to take a customer service call even though someone in her position wouldn't really do so. They would let other people beneath them to handle that stuff, but good on her for dealing with customers. And yeah, and I thought Anne Hathaway did a great job with this performance here. And also, too, I want to note that with About the Fit, it's quite weird for a company name because because it's pointing out like the fit, the size, and we're dealing like with clothes and all that stuff, and that relates to different issues with body image and all that stuff. So I don't know if about the fit is appropriate name, but hey, I guess it gets straight to the point, so to speak. I don't know. Also, too, I want to note that two out of the three main actors from Workaholics are in this movie. So we have Adam Devine. He plays Jason, who's another intern at the company. And then we also have Anders Holm. He plays Matt, Jules's husband. So I found that's quite fascinating. Probably there was a missed opportunity to include Blake Anderson. Maybe he could have appeared as one of the CEOs that's being considered for the position at Jules's company, or so to speak. But because I don't know if Nancy Meyers knew that beforehand while casting this movie, or she realizes afterwards. But again, who knows? But I just wanted to point this stuff out for those that are fans of the show. And that's essentially what I have for highlights. In terms of lowlights, yeah, there could have been more use of fashion because it's interesting that it focuses on the business side of fashion because it's an online, I believe, e-commerce business and all that stuff. But I just wish as fashion, it would been nice to see more of like the nuts and bolts of that thing because I guess with this movie, it focuses more on the relationship between Ben and Jules. Not so much about the company itself. We see stuff every now and then in terms of like how things are run, but that's more brief. But yeah, I would have loved to see more uses of fashion in this movie. And also, too, I just wondered how did Matt Jules's husband know that Jules knew about the affair. So to bring it up, so apparently Ben, he when he was taking Jules's daughter home from the party, he saw Matt inside a car with another woman as they were heading back into the house. So obviously Ben became suspicious then. And then in San Francisco, Jules told Ben about Matt cheating on her. So it seems like this is an like going problem, and she's quite upset as they were talking about it in the hotel room. And then all of a sudden, Matt he heads to Jules's office. This was after the trip. He went to apologize about the affair and wanted to fix their marriage essentially, and then they're able to patch things up. So I just wondered, like, how did he knew? Unless if he suspected that Jules know, I don't know. And I assume that because this was ongoing, maybe he had a hint that he knew. I don't know if that were the case. That's weird for him to continue with the affair, but I don't know. Unless if there were some deleted scenes or something, or something I missed, I just did not get that part. And lastly, as a low light, I felt like there was some pacing issues, particularly towards the later half of the movie, so it could have been tightened. But other than that, it's quite decent with the movie. All right, let's get into the trivia. So there's not a lot of facts that I could find for this movie. So first up, apparently this was originally set up at Paramount Pictures. So the original plan was to have Tina Fey and Michael Caine in the lead roles, but then at some point it got shifted to Warner Brothers. Tina Fey was replaced by Reese Witherspoon, and then at some point Reese Witherspoon she left the project due to scheduling conflicts, and then Anne Hathaway took over the role essentially. And then I'm assuming at one point Michael Caine left, and then Robert De Niro took over. Also, too, as another fun fact, apparently, when Ben is confused as to who Jay Z is, apparently it's an in joke because apparently there was some beef happening between Robert De Niro and Jay Z between 2012 and 2016. Interesting. Also, too, Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway, they learned Tai Chi from Tiffany Chen, the daughter of Grandmaster William C.C. Chen, because that was during like the final scene, if you remember, when Ben decided to take the day off. Essentially, Jules went to meet him. Essentially, and then they did Tai Chi in that moment. And also, too, I saw that apparently with Robert De Niro, he's married, I believe, to Tiffany Chen, and they have a kid together, I believe, or maybe two. But yeah, congrats to that. And then, as a final trivia fact, Robert De Niro's daughter, Drina, she plays the hotel manager there in San Francisco. So there's that. All right. Now, last question. Should this movie be rediscovered? I say sure. Why not? I don't know if it's up there for me in terms of Nancy Meyers films. It's certainly underrated, I would say, amongst her filmography. But yeah, it's quite decent as a comedy. Like you'll have fun with it, and then also too with the dramatic moments. Those are quite worthwhile to watch, I would say. So there is that. So that pretty much concludes this episode of the podcast. So you can find me on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at Nomfanelo. You can find the podcast on Instagram, X, Blue Sky, YouTube, and Linktree at RD Movies Pod. Visit buymeacoffee.com/RD Movies Pod, where you can support the podcast via donation and view exclusive posts there. Join the Rediscovered Movies Hub, which is our community group on the official Wix website, which is rdmoviespod.wixsite.com/official, where you can interact with others, share thoughts on the podcast, and more. You can answer the feature poll, rate the podcast, and leave a comment on Spotify. You can leave a review and rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Good Pods, and Podchaser. And submit questions, comments, and suggestions by email, which is rediscoveredmovies@gmail.com, or you can fill out the contact form in our link tree to be featured on a Q&A episode, which will air after the end of the season. All right, so I want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to catch you on the next one.